They say peace is a fragile thing. A whisper in the wind. Easily shattered. But what happens when that peace is systematically, deliberately torn apart? When the sanctuary of your own home becomes a battleground? Imagine the quiet desperation of a man pushed beyond his breaking point. A man who, after years of enduring the unthinkable, decided to respond. And what he did was truly unbelievable. But before we dive into that, tell me, where are you watching from? Arthur. Just Arthur. A guy who liked his mornings quiet, his evenings calm. He worked from home, a freelance graphic designer, mostly. He liked the routine, coffee, a few hours on the computer, maybe a walk in the late afternoon. But his real passion? His garden. That little patch of green out back, it was his sanctuary. He'd spend hours there, coaxing life from the soil. You could see it in his hands, calloused but gentle, as he tended to his roses, his tomatoes, his little herb patch. It was more than just plants. It was a reflection of his soul. Quiet, careful, and full of a simple kind of beauty. But then, the cracks started to appear. It wasn't a sudden earthquake, more like a slow leak. A drip, drip, drip of irritation. Barry's music, blaring at all hours. His friends, parking in Arthur's driveway, laughing when he asked them to move. Little things you might think. But little things add up. They chip away at you bit by bit. That feeling when you come home, and you don't feel safe anymore. You're not looking forward to the peace. You're bracing for the next disturbance. We've all been there, haven't we? That feeling of being trapped in a cycle you can't control. The neighbor with the barking dog, the noisy construction, the constant stream of notifications on your phone. The feeling that your own little corner of the world, the place where you're supposed to find peace, is being slowly, steadily invaded. The way that gnaws at your insides, that constant low-level anxiety that never quite goes away. You start to dread simple things, like going to the mailbox, or taking out the trash, because you know he will be there. That's what it was like for Arthur. A steady erosion of his peace, a slow strangling of his sanctuary, and it was happening right outside his back door. Then came Barry. He wasn't just a storm. He was a whole system of arrogance, a relentless tempest of entitlement that descended upon that quiet street. It wasn't just that he was loud. It was how he was loud. Not the joyful noise of a celebration, but the grating, insistent roar of someone who believes the world revolves around them. Imagine the late-night parties that shook your windows, the bass vibrating through your floorboards, not just once, but every weekend, like a relentless, throbbing headache that just wouldn't quit. The kind where you call the authorities, and they either don't show up, or they tell you there's nothing they can do. And it wasn't just the noise. It was the blatant disregard for common decency, the little things that erode your faith in humanity. Like tossing trash into your yard, not accidentally, but deliberately, with that dismissive flick of the wrist. Or parking his oversized truck across two spaces, not because he couldn't park, but because he simply didn't care. And those little things? They weren't little to Arthur. It was a constant barrage of disrespect, a daily drip, drip, drip of disdain that wore down his soul. But beyond the noise and the parking, there was something even more insidious, the casual cruelty. The way he'd mock Arthur's quiet nature, those snide remarks about living like a hermit, delivered with a sneer that dripped with malice. The way he'd spread rumors, those little lies designed to isolate and demean. It was like he was spraying poison, a toxic cloud that seeped into the very fabric of the neighborhood. And the silence. That's what really gets to you, isn't it? The other neighbors, the ones who used to smile and wave, now just avert their eyes, too afraid to get involved, too worn down to fight back. You see them at the grocery store, at the bus stop, and you want to scream, "Doesn't anyone else see this? Doesn't anyone care?" You feel that knot in your stomach, that mix of anger and despair, knowing that you're not just dealing with the bully, but with the chilling indifference of those around you. It's not just the bully's actions that inflict pain. It's the feeling of being utterly alone, abandoned by the very people who should have your back. The silent acceptance of injustice is a wound that festers, a constant reminder that your peace, your safety, your dignity, it doesn't matter. That feeling of being let down by your community, by those you thought were your friends, that feeling of isolation and helplessness. Does that feel familiar? Have you ever been there? Something snapped. It wasn't a dramatic cinematic break, but the quiet, internal severing of a delicate thread, stretched to its absolute breaking point. Imagine a rubber band pulled taut for years, slowly losing its elasticity, its ability to return to normal. That's what happened to Arthur. It wasn't one big event, but a culmination, a single excruciating moment when the weight of those years of torment, those countless small indignities, became utterly unbearable. It was the straw that broke the camel's back, the final drop that overflowed the cup. The quiet man, the gentle soul who found solace in his garden, in his routines, in the simple pleasures of life. He was gone. Not erased but transformed. Replaced by something else. Something unexpected. Something that had been lying dormant, a force born of desperation, a resolve forged in the fires of injustice. It was like watching a calm lake suddenly reveal a powerful, hidden current beneath its surface. It's a primal thing, isn't it? That moment when you realize you've been pushed too far, when your survival instinct kicks in, when you realize that your peace, your very sense of self, is on the line. The question is, when pushed to that absolute edge, when every fiber of your being screams for respite, for justice, what would you do? How far would you go to reclaim your peace, to protect what's rightfully yours? He didn't scream. He didn't rage. There was no dramatic outburst, no violent confrontation. He didn't resort to fists or weapons. Instead, he retreated into himself, into the quiet corners of his mind. He used what he had. His knowledge of the neighborhood, the intricate details of its systems, the very rules and regulations that Barry so brazenly ignored. He used his ingenuity, that quiet, unassuming intelligence that had always been his strength. And what he created? It wasn't a bomb or a brawl. It was something far more intricate, far more unsettling. It was a masterpiece of subtle disruption. A symphony of calculated chaos, where every note was perfectly placed, every action precisely timed. Imagine a series of dominoes, each one seemingly insignificant on its own, but when toppled in the right sequence, creating a chain reaction that brings down the entire structure. That's what Arthur did. It was a series of events so meticulously planned, so exquisitely executed, that it left the entire neighborhood not just surprised, but utterly speechless. They watched in disbelief as Barry's carefully constructed world began to unravel, thread by thread. It was like watching a magician perform the impossible. Only this wasn't magic. This was something far more real, far more potent. And Barry? Well, his reign of terror, his sense of invincibility, was about to be shattered. His world was about to be turned upside down, not with a bang, but with a whisper. But how? What exactly did he do? What was this intricate plan that Arthur, the quiet man, had devised? That, my friends, is where the unbelievable comes in. Are you ready for the shocking twist? Are you prepared to see how far a man can go when pushed to the edge? Not with violence, but with his mind. The twist? It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about an eye for an eye. Arthur didn't seek to inflict the same pain Barry had caused. He sought something more profound, something more lasting. Exposure. He aimed to strip away Barry's carefully constructed facade, to reveal the entitled, arrogant bully hiding beneath the veneer of charm he occasionally put on. He used Barry's own arrogance against him, meticulously documenting every transgression, every violation of the neighborhood's rules, every instance of casual cruelty, and then, he presented it. He didn't break the law, he used it. He became a master of the mundane, a weaponizer of the rules. He used the HOA regulations, those dusty, often ignored documents, to his advantage. He filed complaints, he organized meetings, he presented evidence, all with the unwavering calm that had once defined him. He used Barry's own words against him, those carelessly uttered insults and threats, recording them, preserving them, and then playing them back for all to hear. He used the system, the very system that had seemed to fail him, the system that had turned a blind eye to Barry's behavior, to bring Barry's reign of terror to an end. Not with violence, but with a calculated, almost poetic justice. It was a slow burn, a meticulous dismantling of Barry's power, achieved not through brute force, but through the quiet, relentless application of truth and procedure. He showed them, and perhaps himself, that even the quietest voice can roar when it speaks with the unwavering conviction of justice. He proved that even the most fragile soul can find a core of strength, a wellspring of resilience, when pushed to the absolute limits of endurance. And in the end, it wasn't just Barry who changed. The entire neighborhood did. The silence that had once been so deafening was replaced by a chorus of voices. Neighbors who had once averted their eyes now met each other's gaze with newfound understanding and solidarity. They found their voices, speaking out against injustice, large and small. They found their courage, standing up for what was right, even when it was difficult. They found their community, forging bonds of empathy and support that had been fractured for so long. And Arthur, the quiet man, the man pushed to his limits, finally found his peace. But it wasn't a simple, uncomplicated peace. It was a peace born of struggle, a peace tinged with the knowledge of what it takes to confront evil. A peace that came at a cost. The cost of his former anonymity, the cost of confronting the darkness within his own community, the cost of forever being known as the man who stood up to Barry. The question lingers. Was it worth it? What are your thoughts? Have you ever felt pushed to your limits? What would you have done? Share your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video. And remember, even the quietest among us can make a world-shattering noise.